Hello and welcome to the Everything is Black and White podcast. Newcastle United are into the semi-final of the League Cup, and it sounds so good to be able to say that. The Magpies beat Brentford 3-1 at St James's Park on Wednesday night, and now await the draw to see who stands between them and a Wembley final in March. We'll speak about the game against the Bees, the magic of Sandro Tonali, the potential semi-final opponents, and of course the game with Ipswich this weekend. I'm joined by John Gibson as usual to get into it all. And a special thanks to NordVPN who continue to support the podcast. Remember, you can get a very special discounted offer by hitting the link in the description box. I was working on a train earlier this week, heading down to Birmingham, John, for a bit of a work meeting, a bit of a Christmas do. And it was nice to know while I was tapping away, editing some brilliant content, because we produce nothing less, that I was protected by NordVPN. So protect yourselves against the scammers and hackers, especially at this time of year, and also help support the podcast. Your support is much appreciated. John, welcome back. How are we doing? High as a kite, one assumes.
Well, I was going to say after the last two results, Andrew, the last two NUFC results, I'm a lot better than I was previous to that. And we all said, didn't we, what a big week this was for Newcastle when they were playing Leicester, Brentford, and Ipswich. We've got 2 wins out of 2 so far. If we make it 3 out of 3 on Saturday, that'll be the best Christmas present you could give a Geordie.
Yes, most certainly. So it'd be lovely to go into Christmas on the back of 3 wins and set themselves up nicely for the games against Villa and Manchester United. More about those fixtures in a moment or two. Last night, John, against Brentford, it was relatively easy for Newcastle, and they weren't
Yeah.
really troubled until late on, by which time the game had gone. What did you make of it?
Yeah, exactly what you said. I mean, a couple hours before kickoff, I was in a pub, Fleet Street, talking to Newcastle fans, which is my one. And my forecast there was 3-1, and the result become 3-1. So I suppose I got what I expected. And I did expect us to win, because this isn't the Brentford that beat us 4-2. This is Brentford away from home, where they're pussycats, they're lions at home. And the reason for that, they've got to decide. But they're very poor travellers. They'd lost every single game in the Premier League away from home, bar one, not draw at Everton. And, the fact that they're poor travellers linked to the fact that they left their best player on the bench at the start indicated to me that we wanted it more than them. And if we wanted it more than them, we were going to win. And we did want it more than them. And I'm not taking anything away from Newcastle when I'm saying about them being poor travellers, etc. You can only beat what's put in front of us. And we beat Leicester comprehensively, and we beat Brentford comprehensively. The secret now is to make certain it is a hat trick of wins and go on and beat Ipswich comprehensively.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And you're spot on. When I saw the team sheet, I was really, really surprised. You had Nathan Collins, you had Brian Mbeumo, and you had Mikael Damsgaard all on the bench. Nathan Collins ended up starting the game because of a late change. But you are right. I was sitting there looking at it and thinking, what on earth has Thomas Frank done here? Because he
Yeah.
seemed to be looking at the bigger picture, the games coming up, whereas Eddie Howe was definitely focused on last night and only last night. And you're right, as soon as you saw the team sheet, I felt there's only one team going to win this. And I do think, John, from a Brentford point of view, Thomas Frank might regret his decision, because towards
Oh,
the end of the game, the likes of Damsgaard and Mbeumo, they made a difference. They really, really did. And
they
Mbeumo
did.
got the
They did.
assist.
But I mean, the one question I would ask him, if Brentford was my team instead of Newcastle United being my team, is why do you put out, shall we call it, a weekend side that you've got to if you leave out a couple of your best players? Why do you do that in the League Cup when you're Brentford? You're not going to win the Premier League, and they're too good at home to go down, so that they're almost safe now in the Premier League, but you're not going to do anything. They're not going to make you because of their way form. So why don't you try to win the League Cup? I mean, Wigan won the FA Cup a little few years back when they beat Man City in the final. Surely it was in Brentford's uh, compass that they would want to win the League Cup as much as we did, for different reasons maybe. But we showed we wanted it with an unchanged team and with the attitude we took onto the pitch. to me, their team sheet was a little bit like the one I saw donkeys years ago when Wood Hullett was manager of Newcastle, and he put the team sheet out for us to play a derby with Sunderland, and we had people like Shearer and Duncan Ferguson on the subs bench for a derby match at home to Sunderland. I said that's the best suicide note I've ever seen in my life. And of course, we got cuffed, and he fell on his sword afterwards. I'm not suggesting it was as dramatic as that, but the team sheet, I was elated when I saw their team sheet, and I was reassured when I saw ours because I had been belting on, let's play the 11 that started and did so well against Leicester. And it proved how much we wanted it. Then, when we went out on the pitch, the way the game was approached for the first hour showed that we wanted more than them as well. You're right. They got their goal back right at the death because they brought on a couple of their big hitters, albeit we knew we were home and hosed by then. So, we weren't quite at it in the way we needed to be at it because letting in one goal in a game where there's no goal difference, you're not in the league, didn't matter a jot, really. But yeah, I was staggered by their team sheet. But whoever will get in this semi final, I hope they don't look towards Wembley and put out a team sheet that's rather similar.
No, I think actually looking at the teams that Newcastle United could be drawn against, the draw is on Thursday night after the Spurs-Man United game. I don't think there's too much to be concerned about. Obviously, they're all good sides, but if it's Arsenal and Liverpool, I think they may play a weakened side because they'll be battling for the Premier League title. Now, of course, a weakened Arsenal Liverpool side can most probably get into the top six, if they were playing week in, week out.
Yeah.
So it's nothing to be like celebrated, but at the same time, I'm not sitting here looking at the four names in the hat or the five names in the hat and dreading it, because I think Newcastle United have proven they can match them, if not better, most of those teams. And they've got a leg at home as well. So
I was
more on
going
that
to
in a
say
moment, though, John. Go on, sorry,
that's
go
the
on.
big that's the big thing, Andrew. What you just said there is that it's two-legged. If it was a one-off game and we got drawn away to one of these sides, you would puff your cheeks out and say, "Whoa, this is." If it was a one-off on a neutral ground, like say the FA Cup was in old days, etc., you would say tough, tough, tough. But when we are at home, I mean, we drew with Liverpool. We could have easily beat Liverpool up here. We beat Arsenal up here. When we are at it, at our game, the top of our game, and we play at home, we're as good as any team in the league, and I mean that. So because we'll have a home leg, it gives us a real chance. So I wouldn't be afraid of any side we get, although I wouldn't suggest that any of them would be easy, because there isn't a sort of fluke side going to be in there. If you take Manchester United or Spurs, they can both be iffy. I would like to draw the winner of that, by the way, if I had an option. That's who I would want. But I mean, there's no stroll in the park here, but neither has anybody guaranteed to buy Newcastle. And Newcastle have got to this stage, and they've beaten them. They've beaten three Premier League clubs now, haven't they? In Forest and um, Chelsea,
Chelsea.
and now Brentford. So we haven't got there the easy route either, to be truthful. And yeah, it's all looking good. And that was critical last night, Andrew. Not just because it keeps our hopes alive at Wembley, but because it doesn't put a big hole in the season. And if we got eliminated from the League Cup within touching distance at Wembley by a defeat at home, what would it be like going to Luton? And what would we be like for the rest of the Premier League season with only the FA Cup to come? Yes, it was critical that Leicester was followed up with the right result, and it was.
Yeah, certainly so. The goals came from Sandro Tonali, who scored a beautiful brace, and Fabian Schär tapped one at home in the second half. As we said, it was convincing, but without wasting too much energy. That's the second time in a week as well, because it was relatively, they conserved their energy against Leicester, really, and they did so last night. The spirit of the group will be sky high now. The spirit of the fan base is sky high now. What does it do to have another win and performance like that in such quick succession?
Vital, absolutely vital, because it was also at home. So you're playing in front of the faithful. You're not playing in front of 1,500 very loyal fans that travel all over the country and are absolutely wonderful for us away from home. But you're playing in front of 50,000 and a lot more what Geordie's watching on television throughout the area, the country, and the world if it comes to that. So it was absolutely incredible. After the few setbacks we've had, it's been up and down like a fiddler's elbow this season, hasn't it? 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, then a couple of steps to the side. But this was back to back. And I'm not suggesting, to stop us getting too carried away, Andrew, that the opposition has been monumental in these 2 games, because I thought Leicester were very poor and Brentford were very submissive and put out not the best side. But again, as I said before, you can only beat what's in front of you, and we beat them convincingly. And we're going along scoring goals. We scored 3 against Liverpool, 2 down at Brentford, 4 against Leicester, and 3 against Brentford up here. That's 12 goals in 4 games. We're scoring goals again, which is vitally important. And what was interesting last night was we won 3-1, and not one of our front 3 players scored. Tonali's the sitting midfielder, allegedly, although he wasn't. He was sitting very high when he scored, but he is the number 6 sitting midfielder, and a centre half got the goals. So we showed we can still score goals when Isaac isn't scoring goals, which is another big plus.
Yeah, definitely so. And Tonali, as we said, they got the brace. Wonderful first goal to keep that as low as he did and as powerful as he hit it. Beautiful finish. And then the second goal was another really well worked corner routine. In the last week, we've seen 3 goals now come from set pieces, and Newcastle United have seemingly found their mojo when it comes to set pieces. It was there in the season they finished 4th. It wasn't really there last season, hasn't been there this season until the last week. But I really enjoyed that second goal in particular, because you had Dan Burn and Joe Linton effectively blocking the Brentford defence and then allowing the space for Tonali to run in. And what a wonderful finish, by the way, for the second goal. How excited are you, John, to see them finally making the most of set pieces again?
Very, very, because set pieces are such a crucial part of football. Arsenal are where they are today in the league because of the set pieces. Their set pieces are a lot different in the way they do them to our set pieces. I would suggest our set pieces have got a lot more cleverness attached to them because they're open, as opposed to planting the ball on top of the goalkeeper and having 5 jolly green giants massacring the keeper in the back 4. Ours has got more subtlety, more grace in that about it. Not that I'm knocking Arsenal's. Whichever way you can score, as long as it's legit, that's wonderful. But I was excited. But I'm even more excited, Andrew, to see Sandro Tonali doing what he's doing now. Because we spent 52 million on this guy. He had a sensational debut against Aston Villa, hadn't scored since for us, then had that dreadful 10-month period out. That could have killed him, and all the odds looked as though it would kill him at the time, because he'd struggled to get into this new environment. It was a new country, a new culture, a new language. He left his beloved AC Milan, where he was always a fan of the club from cradle, and all of a sudden he'd had to leave and come to here, and he looked bewildered at times, bless him, early on. And the 10-month ban, excuse me, could have sunk him, absolutely sunk him, and he could have felt low in a snake's belly and looked for an exit back to Italy. Instead, he showed so much backbone, so much determination to embrace his new situation, so much gratitude for what the fans and the management and the board did for him during that 10 months. And he's come back as an absolute revelation. And we now see what we paid £52 million for. It's taken longer at club level than it did at international level. At international level, he re-established himself very, very quickly with Italy because they give him the opportunity and the platform to do it. We were a little bit different. We were cautious with him in terms of how much he could do, although he had never been injured. It wasn't that, it was his lack of playing time. But we were perhaps, in my book, a little too cautious with him, as he showed by what he did with Italy. And then it was a matter of finding the right position for Mandu. And it was and this is what they talked about. Could Bruno Tonali and Joe Linton play together? Was there a balance? Who did what out of those three? Now, when Tonali was playing right side of midfield and Bruno was sitting, I think it didn't work. It certainly didn't get the best out of Tonali. That is not his position. And as Eddie Howe says, Bruno plays number six, vastly different to the way Tonali plays number six. I would suggest Tonali plays number six, the better of the two. But that's not taking away anything from Bruno, because when he's moved to the right side, he's looked terrific. So the balance is there now. But you have to have Tonali in the middle of the park, sitting at the base of the diamond, looking at everything in front of him, and being, because he's so athletic. He's got terrific vision. He's got a velvet touch, long and short. And you know what? The game today, and this will make you smile because I often go on about it, the game today is riddled by an obsession with stats. Get your stats out, put them down on the. Joe Harvey wouldn't have known what to do with the stats. He would have put them in the bin. But they do play a significant part. I'm not an old fuddy duddy that way. They do reveal an awful lot to a lot of people and to people behind the scenes, and the game moves on. But what I feel when I watch some of the football now is that certain players, especially midfield in the back four, they think of, when they're on the ball, they think of their stats, and the completed passes ratio has got to be high. In the pass sideways, they're not adventurous. They get a hold of the ball and they pass it along the back four, or they pass it to each other in the middle three. They don't take a risk, because a risk, you might misplace a pass, your stats look bad. But you know what? You know, you win games, you actually pass forward. You don't pass sideways. You pass sideways when you have to. But and the first thing Tonali does playing six is look to make a forward pass. If it's not on, he'll hit it square. But he looks to make the forward pass. And they're the ones that tell, and they're the ones that open up. And he is such a wonderful technician, that you were mentioning the way the two goals came, Andrew. He's such a wonderful technician. He hits the ball so cleanly, even under pressure. Even under pressure, he hits the ball so very cleanly. And he's found his right position. It took a while for, I'm not saying he didn't know his right position. It might have taken a while for Eddie to realise it, but he's playing in his right position in the three, and he's proven he can play with Bruno, and Bruno's proven he can play with Tonali.
Yeah, we're seeing the benefits of Tonali performing really well and Bruno reaping the rewards of that as well, because he's looked like a different player with Tonali in that deeper role. I just, on Tonali's path back to the first team, and quite a lot of people had asked questions of Eddie Howe, why is it taking this long? Why is it taking his time to put him back in the side? But you know what, John? Maybe this was the plan all along. Maybe Eddie Howe does know a thing or two about football. And you're going to say to me, well, Italy played him XYZ amount of times and played him 90 minutes. But Eddie Howe has a track record. Lewis Hall, Bruno when he first signed. And he seems to always, in the long term, get it right. So maybe we have to give Eddie Howe his dues and say, do you know what? It took a little bit of time, but if this was the plan all along, well done.
Oh, I mean, of course he knows what he's doing. That's why we finished fourth. And that's why we made a Wembley Cup final, and why we've kept making progression. But everybody's a human being as well, and so we've all got traits that are huge pluses, and we've all got traits that are small minuses. He has huge pluses, and he's got small minuses. And if I had to mention small minuses, and it's funny to mention it after two wins, isn't it? It would be he's sometimes excessively loyal to players who he doesn't want to leave the club when the sell-by date is rapidly coming up or has already passed. And B, he errs on the side of caution an awful lot, in terms of, is somebody right or not right. you're absolutely correct. If Tonali goes and for the rest of the season looks a world beater, you can say Eddie got it right. You could also say that he could have looked like a world beater for the last 3 months if he'd been played centre midfield in the nine. He was doing it with Italy, so in the six, sorry, he was doing it with Italy. So you can look at it any way you like. There's always he got it right with Joe Linton, centre forward to midfield. Did he get it right? Did it happen by accident? Who cares? It off worked. And we've got the right balance now, I think, with Bruno right side, Joe Linton left side, and let Tonali sit there. And the person that's benefited the most is Tonali. He looked a bit of a fish out of water on the right side of the three, sitting in that central position with the vision he's got, being able to see everything right and left, is suddenly he's blossomed into what he is, which is a £52 million midfielder. And by Jove, didn't we need that? Because we spent a lot of money when it turns out that we haven't had a lot of money because he took a big dollop of the money we had for financial fair play. So we needed him to be a success. And I would give Eddie more credit for what he did with Lewis Hall than what he's done with Sandro Tonali. But where I would give him a lot of credit and give everybody else within St James's Park a lot of credit is not what they've done with him since he came back, but what they did with him during his suspension. Because that transformed Sandro Tonali from looking like a bloke out of his depth who just wanted to eat beef burgers in a Gosforth pub to what he is now, which is a top performer in the best league in the world and a blue chip international.
Yeah, and he's looking like he's really enjoying his football. Those goals will, of course, help his mood even further. And if he can continue to add to his tally, that's absolutely brilliant because I think Newcastle have lacked that goal scoring midfielder. But with Bruno playing a little bit more advanced, maybe he can start and add to that one goal so far this season. But I do think Bruno has really come on since he's been allowed to have a bit more of an advanced role. Newcastle United are reaping the awards of that. He got an assist last night. I just want to quickly ask you, because there's been a lot of talk, John, with Man City's troubles and Kevin De Bruyne. Is he getting too old? Is he going to move off to Saudi Arabia? And obviously Rodri's injured. A lot of talk again about Man City and Bruno Guimaraes potentially in January. Given his form of late, and he has looked very good, do you think there's anything in that? Are you worried by that link, that story?
I mean, no, I'm not worried. I think there's something in it because Manchester City will be looking everywhere. They'll have spread their net everywhere because all of a sudden they've been found to be very vulnerable. They've been invincible for about 6 seasons, absolutely invincible. And Pep has been the greatest coach we've ever seen, we've been told. And all of a sudden, bless him, he's scratching his head so hard, he's got blotches all over the top of it. And they've won one out of about 11. And the squad's getting old. Bernardo Silva, Walker, he used to run the 100 metres like Usain Bolt. He's now running them in big divers boots. They're a different side completely. And they will have a big bash in the transfer market. There's no question about it. And you know what? If you've got decent players, you're bound to have people look at them. And, when we've got Gordon and we've got Isaac and we've got Bruno and we've got the next thing, we'll hear about people wanting to sign Tonali in this country and all the Italian clubs wanting to take him home. You know why? Because he's a good player. That's why. If you've got good players, you always hear people are going to, chase them. When we were with Mike Ashley, we didn't worry about losing many players to Champions League sides, did we? Because no Champions League side would want them. You're bound to have that. And there's always the possibility, and if they pay 100 million, then we've got to let him go if he wants to go. But will they bid 100 million? I'm not sure they will. Because Bruno's a fabulous player that does a fabulous job. He is one paced. He does get booked. He does a terrific job. I'm more concerned about losing Isaac because you don't replace 20 goal centre forwards. And I'm not playing down Bruno, and I'm not playing down Gordon, and I'm not playing down Tonali because, by Jove, I'm thrilled we've got all four. I'm thrilled we've got all four. But if we were going to lose somebody, can you imagine losing Isaac? in taking these 25 goals last season out of the team and these 20 goals in this calendar year out of the team and his silky ability out of the team when we haven't got a centre forward cover whatsoever, and then told go and get a 60 million pound centre forward that is good or better than him, it would be a step backwards, wouldn't it? I would hate to lose Gordon and I would hate to lose Bruno as well. But let us not live in fear. Let us, I mean, if we do something about it, if we are going to get to Wembley in the League Cup, if we start getting results to get us back into Europe, and that, believe you me, all these lads love it here. They'll stay here. They'll want to stay here. Your Brunos, your Gordons, your Isaacs, your Tonalis. They want Newcastle to be a success. If we're not a success, of course they'll look to go because they're quality players. Their career's short and they want to play regularly in the Champions League before it's too late. But no, I'm not worried about losing Bruno to Manchester City in January. I'm more concerned about who we are going to get in January because despite being in the semi-finals of the League Cup and despite absolutely taking Leicester apart, we're still 12th in the Premier League, Andrew. We didn't go, when the weekend games last weekend were all completed, we hadn't moved up a place with those 3 points. We were 12th when we went into the Leicester game, and we're 12th now. So it's like climbing up a greasy pole, getting up the Premier League, and so we've got to get on with it against against Ipswich with another 3 points. But we've got to go out and get some players in, and if that means players going out, I would hope and look at that those players will be Almiron and Trips and whoever. And if you've got to get rid because you must, as we did with Elliot Anderson. Sean Longstaff could go in the same way as Elliot Anderson. But I would rather Harvey Barnes went if we had to get rid of somebody, despite the goals he scored, because he can't be a regular starter with Gordon in the side, and he's not a right winger, he's a left winger. I'd rather he be sacrificed than some of our blue chip players.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people would agree with you. Just on the topic of incomings in January, we mentioned there Brian Mbeumo was introduced late on against Newcastle, got an assist for Brentford's only goal of the game. I'm sure if Steve Nixon or Paul Mitchell were there watching, they would have been impressed because he seemed to bring a bit of bounce to the team. Him and Wiss have got a fantastic relationship. So imagine if it was him and Alexander Isak. He looks like a real star, and even in the limited cameo that he did have, I think he would have. He definitely caught the eye.
Well, he's a good player. They would have been even more impressed if they'd been at Brentford because he played the full game and so you got the full range of what he can do. He's a quality player. The problem we've got is January is only a month to get somebody, not like 4 months or whatever it is in the summer. So, and sides are much more reluctant to sell unless they're going to lose somebody on a free at the end of the season because they haven't got time to buy replacements themselves. Then you've got to persuade whoever you want because whoever you want, Andrew, is going to be a good player because you don't want average players. We are after good players. You've got to convince them that Newcastle currently 12th or 10th or 9th, which they might be on January the 1st, is still a better prospect than going to some of the clubs higher up who will also be sniffing for them. So you've got a little problem when you're not in the top mix to persuade players. And they may decide, hey, I'll hang on to the summer and sit back and see who is in the Champions League in the other European competitions and who's done, and I'll have more time to decide on my future. It's going to be tough to pull a rabbit out of the hat and to pull a rabbit out of the hat that's going to make an instant impact. Because if you remember, one of our great January buys was Anthony Gordon, but for the rest of the season, after January till the end of his first half of his time here, he was very average and couldn't get in the side regularly, and then become a superstar afterwards. So we need whoever we get in January to hit the ground running as well as get somebody good.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. So one to watch. Still a little bit nervous about January. I've got a feeling they might not be able to sign anyone, even though they need it. But that's just a hunch, just my opinion. It's not inside knowledge or anything. Probably the only downside, John, to yesterday's win over Brentford was the fact that Bruno and Cher both picked up yellow cards, which means they'll miss the first leg of the semi-final. which then probably leads into the answer for the next question. I was going to ask you, would you prefer the first leg at St James's Park or the second leg at St James's Park? I guess if it means the second leg at St James's and you can have Bruno and Cher there, there's only one answer, isn't there?
Yeah. I mean, it was the one block last night. And believe you me, it's not going to hit the euphoria of the Geordies today. We've gotten the semi-final of the cup. We've just beaten Leicester. There's hope that we'll go to Ipswich and chuck them up big time. Euphoria's back in place, and we do euphoria well. We do depression well as well, but we do euphoria well. But believe you me, when the first leg of the semi-final comes, not having Bruno and not having Shaw, on top of probably not having Pope, it'll be too early for Pope. That is a real setback. That is a real setback because we can't afford to let the semi-final get away from us with a bad first leg result. We've got to be in with a very good chance come the second leg. And I mean, the way I've always liked two-legged cups in the past, the semi-finals of the League Cups and the FA Cups, and indeed all the Fez Cup games, which were all two-legged when we won our only trophy. I always want the second leg at home because regardless of if people that are out through suspension, you want to play at home with the crowd behind you, knowing exactly what you've got to do to get to Wembley because the crowd will help you to do that. So even though we would play the second leg away and be without Sean Pope in our defence, I still rather do it that way. I mean, Shaw's the big miss on paper. We can't do anything about Pope. That's he's injured. But it was an ill discipline, and I would like to give a tiny smack on the wrists to both Shaw and Bruno because they're always capable of doing that, bless them, get booked, a bit like Joe Linton is, and of course he's out at the moment, uh, but won't be for the League Cup semi. But Shaw's a worry because Bruno, yeah, he's skipper and he's done great and all that. But if we've got Tonali and Joe Linton in there, we've then got to look at utilising Willock or Sean Longstaff for the semi-final. But with Shaw, we're not well off at the back. And also, we talk about balance being very important to a team, Andrew, and I'm a great believer in that. And that's what's been wrong with our midfield. How long have we sat here and said the balance of the midfield's wrong? We haven't liked it. It isn't working. Teams are running straight through us, etc., etc. All of a sudden, thankfully, the balance of the midfield looks right. Now, if you take Shaw out of the back, we're on balance, we're struggling because we haven't got a right-sided centre half. It fits in there. We've got Kelly. He's a left-sided centre half. We've got Botman, who's coming back. He's a left-sided centre half. My hope is that Kraft is available to come back, who can play right side centre half, and undervalued or sometimes goes under the radar. Not wonderful, but steady away, and he'd be steady away. Now, all right, if we want to be optimistic, and we do, because Geordies are good at that, we would say, well, we might have Botman back and we might have Kraft back. But it's all right having them on the team sheet, Andrew. The point is, how sharp are they? That might be physically okay to be on the team sheet, but that doesn't mean they're physically okay to repel Liverpool or Arsenal or Spurs or Man U. It's a big ask if they're just coming back. I mean, Botman's been out 9 months. He just comes back and you give him that to go to Wembley and don't make a mistake, else we'll all be on about it. And then who plays the right side? If it's him and Burn, they're both left-sided. It will have to be Botman, I guess. But we might have Kraft, but Shaw, naughty boy. I'd just like to give you a little spank because we could have done without you getting booked, my son. But Shaw's always likely, and as a centre halves are likely. And Bruno, well, we know Bruno. It's part of his game, isn't it? That's part of his minuses, and he's got many pluses. But his ill discipline is something that's there. I mean, Joe Linton's the other one that's exactly the same as Bruno, and Joe Linton will be missing on Saturday down at Ipswich, but at least Sean Longstaff will be available again. But yes, when we come to this is an argument for another day, but when we come to the semi-final, believe you me, Bruno, Shaw, and Pope out will be a massive minus.
Well, hopefully those who step in and replace them in the semi-final can do a great job. Now on to Ipswich then. They've won just 2 in their last 10 games, but did pick up a huge win over Wolves in their last game. They're not a team to underestimate, John, are they? Even though they are 18th in the league, Newcastle United have to go down there with the right attitude, apply themselves right, because Ipswich do have players that can hurt teams.
Oh, Ipswich for me have been the most impressive of the teams that were promoted, and I include Leicester in that, despite them not being in the bottom three. Southampton have been a disaster. Uh, Luton have stayed competitive in all their games. You know, they've often got done late and very tragically in games with goals, but they've remained competitive throughout every game they've played. Yes, they've never won at home. And by the way, I'm attempting fate by pointing that out with us, the next team going to their place, by saying they've never lost at home or they're due a home win. Both their wins in the Premier League have been away from home. But they've remained competitive, which is absolutely great. Um, they've got a manager, a bright young manager who has been brought up well. He's got back-to-back promotions. They've got the right attitude. They've got the right spirit. They go into games the right way. Nobody in our boardroom can chant like the bloke in their boardroom, Ed Sheeran. So they've got one or two things that are going for them. But if we match them on attitude, if we match them on desire, and if we match them on discipline and being competitive, then we win because we've got better players than they have. And you know what? What has given me an extra boost? I mean, I fancied us anyway at Ipswich, and even before we won against Brentford. But you know what? We will talk, and Eddie will talk in his press conference this weekend, and he'll say the loss of Joe Linton's huge. And I know he went off injured, but he's out because of suspension. The loss of Joe Linton's huge, and what he brings to the side and what he brings to midfield, and all of that's true. But you know what? Their loss is greater than ours. They've lost Delap. Now, their centre forward. He's 21-year-old, the son of Rory Delap, you know, the guy with the long throat, Stoke City. Um, and he was brought up right. He's brought up in the Manchester City Academy. All the big teams want him. Juventus are looking at him. Chelsea are looking at him. There's talk Man City could take him back, etc., etc. He he's a sort of Alan Shearer leader, a big, muscular English, well, British, brought up in our fields and plays for the under 21s. He looks a quality. I wish he was our backup, by the way, mate. I wish we had Delap to cover Isaac and occasionally to play with Isaac. He's a good young centre forward in a side that's under the cosh most of the time, and he still scores goals and he pulls them out of situations. And if we thought it was crazy when Joe Linton got booked and got suspended because Eddie Howe had just been shouting at him, "Don't get booked, Joe, don't get booked." And Joe had said back to him, "I won't, Gaffer, I won't, Gaffer." And then what's he do? He gets booked. And so he's out. If that was crazy, the lab is booked after the final whistle. There was the skirmish at Wolves, you know, on the final whistle because Wolves had lost at home, got the manager the sack, didn't it? And there was a skirmish, and in the skirmish, the lap gets a yellow card. It's his fifth. He's got a one-match ban. By the way, are the gods perhaps looking after us? Because if they want a home win, they would normally expect it to come through Delap. And now we're going to have to do it without Delap.
Yeah, it's a wonderful early Christmas present, and the viewers and listeners of the podcast know that I begged Newcastle to sign him in the summer. Begged them because I just said he's going to be brilliant in the Premier League. I think £20 million or so he cost Ipswich, and he's proven so far to be an absolute brilliant buy for Ipswich. 6 goals so far this season. He'll be the man that will fire them to safety if indeed they do stay in the Premier League. And for all the people who had a little go at me in the summer, that's just doing the Jacob Murphy
I was going
celebration
to
there.
say I've seen that one before. Yes.
Come back to us in the summer and let's see how many goals he scored. But yeah, it's a massive boost for Newcastle that he isn't available to play. It's interesting though. You look at some of the stats for Ipswich, and they've had just 163 shots on goal, so it seems chances are at a premium. And they're 18th when it comes to the amount of passes as well. Over the course of the season, which gives you a bit of insight into how they might approach Saturday. I'm not going to sit here and say I know how they're going to approach it. That's what the view from the opposition is all about. So look out for that on Friday. But looking at the stats, watching a bit of match of the day, you would probably think it's going to be Newcastle have quite a lot of the ball. Ipswich will have very little of it. They won't create too much. And again, it goes back to Newcastle just applying themselves correctly.
It does. It's as much mental, this game, as it is physical, because I don't want the excuse there's 3 games in a week as if that's impossible for athletes to do. I mean, back in the old days, in the 70s, when Supermac was playing in that, they played 3 games in a week on pitches which were about 6 foot of treacle and ran through it with the ball bouncing badly all over the place and having licensed thugs like Chopper Harris and Norman Bites Your Legs Hunter and at Anfield Iron, Tommy Smith, absolutely decapitating you. By the way, we had Big John McNamee, who was the best of the lot. But you had all that, and they still played the same team every game. Excuse me, forgive me. And I'm looking for us to field the same team, bar the one change we've got to make for Joe Linton, because it's worked twice. And if you can't play 3 games in a week now, when you're supremely fit, etc., etc., it's a sad old day. I do not want to see my optimism punctured before the kickoff, like it was when we went to Brentford, and all of a sudden, Tonali and Gordon, because of the effort they put in against Liverpool, were supposedly too tired, not them saying it, Eddie saying it, to be in the starting lineup. So you go voluntarily into the game with your 2 best players on the bench. And we lost that, by the way, and Brentford did it last night, and they lost. Is there a warning there? Don't put your best players on the bench. Start them, and if they can't last, bring them off after an hour. But also ask them why they can't last, because this is, this isn't. It's the poor old souls game. I mean, I can't believe it. It is an absolute nonsense. We should field the same team outside of Joe Linton, go down there and tan their backsides, come home and get the turkey out for Christmas.
Yeah, I think they probably will do. Obviously, the only big question is who replaces Joe Linton in the middle of the park. You've kind of alluded to your choice. You think it'll be Sean Longstaff. I think it might be Joe Willock. I know
I,
two
I,
very
I
different
thought,
players.
I take your point, Andrew. Sorry to interrupt there, mate. I take your point. And the obvious guy to have brought in was before last night, and that was Sean Longstaff, because he's fit and because he does a lot of the dirty work, etc., etc. And that is something that is admired by Eddie. It's why Eddie admires Murphy, and why Murphy plays outside right ahead of Harvey Barnes, who will score more goals over a season than Murphy, despite his 2 against Leicester. Harvey Barnes will, without a shadow of doubt. But Harvey Barnes won't track back and help Livramento out if he's playing outside right, or help Hall out if he's playing outside left, because that's not part of his game. Murphy will do that. Murphy will get back and get forward and get back and get forward. And for an away game, you need that, which is why I think Murphy will stay outside right. But I'm with you on this. Having seen Willock last night play for 45 minutes, I think he's a very talented young man. He's had a tough time with injuries, and that is my worry consistently now. We know his talent. Is he capable of doing it from the start and impacting on the game as opposed to drifting through the game? But we have talked about the balance of midfield being right with Bruno on the right side and Tonali in the centre, Joe Linton on the left. If you lose Joe Linton, Willock comes in, plays on the left, and the balance stays exactly the same way. With Longstaff, the balance is not quite the same. You're dabbling with the balance. If Willock is capable of starting and impacting a game and not just drifting through it and us get to a half-time cup of tea, Andrew, and say, by the way, is Joe playing? Did you see him in the first? Is he there? If he can do what he does brilliantly when he feels terrific physically, then there's no doubt you start with him. If he's not capable of doing that, you'll start with Longstaff. I would start with Willock, as you said, and I would bring Longstaff on if he isn't doing it.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Willett last night. I thought he was, very, very good actually. And you are right. There's just that concern over inconsistency. The injuries obviously have impacted him, and I fear with Joe Willock that you get to the kind of point that we are at with Callum Wilson. I mean, there's still a long way to go until we're at that point, but you're kind of heading down the same pathway. You can't keep saying over and over again, like, is this now his time? Is this a way he finds that consistency? And we don't want to keep having 2 or 3 goes and then he's picked up another injury. So I'm really hoping that if he does start against Ipswich on Saturday, he takes his chance. And like Newcastle United have done in the last week, John, he builds on it. It's not just about one performance. It's about the next one, the one after that, and the one after that. So hopefully Willock gets the nod and he can take what he did last night against Brentford into that game and then so on and so on. But back to that point about this week, John, we laid down the challenge to Eddie Howe. We said, beat Leicester, but it only really counts if you then go and beat Brentford and you go and beat Ipswich. They've done that. They've beaten Brentford. They're now facing Ipswich side, 18th in the league, haven't won at home without the talisman up front. This has to be a win, right? This has to be.
Yeah. Oh, without a shadow of doubt. We've got no wiggle room. We're 12th, mate. When I go down in that dressing room, if I was Eddie, the first thing I would do when I got in the Luton, the away dressing room at Luton, I would pin up the Premier League table. And I would say, guys, look at that. Before you think you're walking on air, that you're strutting in the park, that you're going to have a stroll this afternoon and come home with 3 more beds, that's where we are on the table. That's what we've done this season or failed to do. You've shown in the last 2 games you're capable of being much, much better than that. You've shown against Liverpool, you've shown when you've beaten Arsenal, but you haven't shown when you've played the smaller sides. This is a smaller side. Go out and improve that table. I don't want to see that table again for the rest of the season, not with us sitting 12th. I would pin that up on the wall in the Luton dressing room and as a reality check. That, boys, is why we've got to win this afternoon. Because in all the euphoria we've had this week, and of all the backslapping you'll have had individually when you've gone out the house because Geordies are so thrilled with 2 wins, etc., that is the realism of our current situation at 2:30 this afternoon. We're 12th. We're better than that. Let's go out there and prove we're better than that and improve that table. And I don't want to see that table again right away through to May.
So what's going to happen then on Saturday? They're going to be beating Ipswich?
They're going to win. They're going to win. Yeah, they've got to win, and they're going to win. And everything, the wins in our favour, I feel, Andrew. We've got 2 great wins. I accept not against the greatest opposition. Leicester was so bad, it was frightening. They could have played both our goalkeepers. They played one the first half, one the second. They could have played them both at the same time, and they would have still got a smacking. They were that bad. Brentford, away from home, are a different kettle of fish. I know it's not the greatest opposition, but that's always been our weakness, not playing the greatest opposition. We've been fine when we've played the great opposition, but we've done it. We've beaten what was put in front of us and beaten them comprehensively and scored goals in doing so. Now we need to do it one more time so we can really enjoy our Christmas lunch. And they've got to go out and beat Ipswich. Nobody has gone to Ipswich this season and come away with nothing. I would be slightly disappointed with a draw, I think we win this game. And when I look at that league table 12th, I know we've got to win this game, not just anything else. We've got to win this game. And it's the Bobby Robson derby. There's a statue today of old Bobby outside of St James's, and a statue today of old Bobby outside of Portman Road. And his Newcastle coach goes past that statue. I would also, if I was Eddie, say, see the fella up there? He's up at our place, and he's one of us. He might have done brilliantly here, but he's a Geordie. Let's go and do it. And put it in there. We'll have a look at that statue on the way out and see if there's a smile on its face. And I think we will do it. I think it'll be just by a single goal. If I had a push on a score, and I think that's a lottery anyway, because anything can happen score-wise, but I would probably go 2-1. But I take Newcastle to win.
Yep, I'm going to take Newcastle United to win as well. Like you, I think it'll be quite a close game, but fingers crossed they can get all 3 points and they can have a lovely Christmas before the trip of Aston Villa to St James's Park. Thank you, as always, John, for providing the match preview. You have a lovely Christmas as well. We've got a little message for our viewers and listeners. We always do this every year. We always have a Gibbo's Christmas message. I've put you on the spot here because I didn't remind you, but if you would like to say anything, now is your chance.
Yes, yeah. I mean, apart from saying have a wonderful Christmas and a very, very happy New Year, and do have a glass of wine on me, and think about the old man still wanting to get that first trophy since he saw it in 1969 again. And could it possibly be this season? Could it possibly be the League Cup? Yes, it's possible. So keep the faith, as I always say, because we've kept it for an awful long time. And I've just got to go into the holiday full of optimism. There's plenty of realism, and I live by realism, and I live by the fact we need a good January in the transfer market. We need a good return from the quality players putting it in every week. But this is Newcastle United. We've all waited for so long to spend a lot of time in the sunshine instead of walking in the shadows side of the street. And we've had a glimpse of the sunshine with Fourth Top and with a Wembley Cup final. And there's always optimism around the League Cup. We've done great in recent years. Let's plough on with that. Let's get up that league. As I said in the piece, I don't want to see any league table after the game with Ipswich ever again for the rest of the season showing us as low as 12th. I don't want to see that. But let's keep the faith. Let's keep the faith in the club, in Eddie, in the players we've got, and in the belief that Paul Mitchell, backed by the board, will go out and provide for all of us in January with some sort of inspiration to keep us going. But I tell you what, whatever we think, whatever we do, we're having better days than we had under Mike Ashley. We're having much, much better days. Let's realise that. We don't have to be too grateful because we've deserved them over the years of Newcastle United. But it's our club. We love it. That's why it's a sellout down at Ipswich with away fans. That's why it's a sellout at home every time we play. Let's keep the faith. Let's keep the optimism with a tad bit of realism, and let the guys that play for us realise what it means. Let them think of the previous club they were with. Did they have undiluted support like this? And before they want to go, let them realise what they might be leaving behind. You don't have to go, boys. You've just got to do it here, and you will be on top of Gray's Monument.
There we go. Thank you very much, John. Thank you to you guys watching and listening. Do hit thumbs up. Do hit subscribe on the channel. And remember as well to take advantage of a discounted NordVPN offer, a few extra months on a 2-year plan if you do sign up, and protect yourself. And for myself and John, we'll see you guys very soon.